Thank you so much for letting me interview you. Do you mind introducing yourself and talking about what you do?
Mm, Thank you. My name is Dorji. I work with National Commission for Women and Children under the Children's Division. However, uh, the work I do is I look after the children's aspects in promoting and protecting the rights of the children. We do a lot of programs in relation to protecting children's rights, as well as some of the programs that will actually make conducive in the environment for children, and also allow them to um, allow platform where children can actually voice their some those kind like voice their rights.
Oh,
Uh,
mhm. Okay. So my thesis is in relation to the thing, sheltering of children in Bhutan, and since NCWC plays a huge role in formulating policies and frameworks for like sheltering of children in Bhutan, I was wondering if you could kind of tell me more on such policies, if you're aware of such policies.
mm, Thank you. With regard to the shelter policies and all, um, now NCWC is the nodal agency for women and children.
Hmm.
And for that purpose, the NCWC has developed a guideline on the accreditation of shelters for women and children, especially for children, and then for the women who are somehow like from the vulnerable groups who are prone to domestic violence, and then other issues related. And then with regard to the children as well, for those children who are from a very uh, abusive family, so those are the issues that actually catches, and then the shelters have been established. So now, as far as the shelters are concerned, now the Renew and the Najin Lamtin has a shelter that has been established, and then Renew's shelter has been established quite a long time back, whereas the Najin Lamtin's shelter has been there for uh, for quite some time, but it's not as early as Renew's shelter. So now, uh, when it comes to the shelter, there are some requirements based on whether that shelter is particularly fit for children to actually live in. And then there are a lot of things that has to be in place with with regard to sitting arrangement, hall arrangement, then sharing of beds, the size of the room, a lot of standards that needs to be taken into consideration, and that is what NCWC have the guideline on on accrediting those shelters. So that is how NCWC has been doing on this.
Mhm. If I could ask, when was this guideline actually thing introduced? Or when was it actually?
Uh, Now this guideline has been introduced, I think, about in 2016-17. And then
Okay.
it got endorsed somewhere at the end of 2017 or the beginning of 2019. But I'll have to check it out when
Okay.
it was been endorsed. But I'm pretty sure it's not very old document or guideline.
Mhm.
So this document has been developed in consultation with the Civil Society Organization Authority,
Mhm.
and then all the NGOs that has the uh, those who have shelters.
Right. So before this guideline was adopted, like how did NCWC actually kind of protected the rights of children in shelters, such as the one with Renew and all. So how was it monitored?
Now, when it comes to the monitoring, I those children who have been, placed in shelters,
Hmm.
or I think uh, the monitoring part has to be done by NCWC, that because of the as being the nodal agency, and then also the mandate to look after the rights of the children and to monitor all those things. So now, when it comes to monitoring, now before uh, 2017, I think NCWC uh, was lagging behind because there were less number of staffs to actually do the monitoring and all. However, it has been handed over to some of the implementing agencies like police, like like other agencies, especially the police, who actually look after the or actually monitor those children who are in the shelters, and then check on them, and then to making sure that their rights are not violated. And at the same time, also, uh, now the shelter managers and all were all trained to actually understand what is mean by child protection, child rights, and making sure that anything that they do has to be in the best interest of our children. So that is how the NCWC had been doing. So more than that, I think now the shelters accreditation has come in. So any of the shelters has to actually accredit it with NCWC, and then that's how it has to be done. So yearly it has to be done, and then there are some renewal, um, annually renewal of those certificates and all. So these are the procedures that we actually implement.
I see. Since the inception of this guidelines, the introduction, has there been an increase in shelters, especially for children, or has NCW seen any increase?
Um, Now this guideline has been uh, in place for not so long, and then now the NCWC had been creating awareness to all those NGOs who actually uh, run a shelter should get approved or accredited with NCWC. So because we do not have much shelters so far, but
Hmm.
however, the existing shelters are all been now coming forward to get accredited with NCWC.
I see.
So uh, that's it. But the I think the progress of this is not that not that as expected, but we are slowly taking things and then slowly moving on.
I see. So in other countries, there is this decrease in shelters for children because I think because of a lot of research suggests that shelters for children are harmful for them. Like it's not a good environment. So most countries are pushing for this, especially UN. They have this guideline for alternative care where they're pushing towards dismantling shelter homes for children. So what is NCWC's view in this case? Is NC by actually starting guidelines for shelter accreditation and all, isn't like NCWC actually going kind of the opposite way of the UN guideline?
Yeah, you said it rightly, because uh, the, keeping children in an institution is not the last resort. I mean, it's the last resort,
Oh,
and then before that, we have to look for a place where children gets to enjoy their family environment.
okay.
And keeping in an institution is one of the last resort that NCWC always take it into consideration, because we that has been observed that um, shelters will not actually make a perfect or a wholesome mental development for the children, and then it's not a good environment that they always used to wherever we like in the UNs, and then especially in the UNCRC also,
Mm-hmm.
it has mentioned that keeping children in an institution has to be the last resort.
Right.
So likewise, any children that has been so destitute, been so helpless,
Mm-hmm.
we try to keep them in shelter, and then from the shelter we try to look at if that your child is required for longer term means, then we'll have to look for the alternative case. For first thing, we may look after the kinship care, then we may go for foster. And if that is not possible, then we'll have to look for an adoption. So those are the things that to ensure that child have a family, uh, and then making sure that they are not kept in an institution.
Right. So, is there any foster care in Bhutan? Like, I'm not aware of any foster care like system in Bhutan. So,
Uh, I think there is foster care, but I don't have much idea on that.
hmm
But there are a lot of people who actually look after those children who were actually suffering. But
right.
I don't know how many are there, but maybe my colleagues from legal or from the protection will
Right.
be able to
Oh,
give you an update on this.
for the foster care, are they informal or are they monitored by NCWC as well?
Actually, as for the guidelines on
Right.
this foster care and then adoption, they are required to get an approval of NCWC. There are certain criteria that needs to look into whether that person is first thing is capable of taking care of that child as a
Mhm.
foster care.
Right.
So financially, and then mentally, physically, and then see his background. Everything has to be done. Then only NCWC approves. So that is there in that.
Also, there are alternative care such as foster cares in Bhutan, which NCWC
Yes,
actually like regulates and monitors.
yes, yes.
Okay, I see. How popular, like compared to what's the number for children? Is there more children in shelters or more children in foster cares and kinships? Like,
Uh, no, I don't have the exact data, but as far as I know, there are less number of children in the shelters,
mm,
but more number in like foster and then kinship care.
I see. For the
And then
children in the
very
sh
few,
oh, sorry, please continue.
very few in adoption. Yeah.
Adoptions, right? Okay. For the children in the shelter, from what I'm aware, like Gawling children, most of them have been there for like quite a while. Some of them have been for like 5 years and all. Like, what actually, how are their cases managed like, by NCWC? Like, does NCWC seek like other alternatives while they're in the shelter, or is that like the last resort for them?
I instead of see look after those children. It's like if the duration is quite long, then there are certain ways that so, certain things that instead of look after.
Mm-hmm,
First thing they will look after the foster care,
mm-hmm,
and then look for the maybe for kinship care. See if the child has any relatives or anybody who can actually stay with, the child can stay with. And then if not, then we'll go for kinship foster care, and then lastly it may be for adoption. So what we always take is that we do not let the child to be in the shelter, especially in the institutions for a long time,
Mhm.
where the child has to be, making sure that child, you know, grow in a family environment.
Right.
So if it is for long duration, means then NCWC has to intervene in this,
Okay.
making sure that uh, you know things things are normal for them.
Okay. So how does NCWC intervene now? How do they assess like the case of a child who's been in the shelter for quite a while?
Mm, there may be certain ways to access, but I'm not able to tell you on this. Then
Okay.
you can ask my PS colleagues.
Okay.
They will be tell you in detail because what I what I may know must be a brief about. Because basically, it will look after the children's background, what they are studying, and then look for alternatives. If not, then at the last resort, making sure that the child is not left there in the in an shelter for a long time
Mm.
to ensure that they need a family environment to to let that child grow uh, physically as well as mentally sound.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of research indicating that violence and abuse can take place in shelters as well. So with regards to these kind of research, what does NCWC do to ensure that children in shelters do not suffer from such thing, abuses?
Yeah. The first thing, especially those children who are in the shelters, are also prone to bully and other violence, sexual, physical. So a lot of issues can arise from a shelter. So now, in order to prevent such incidents, uh, we instead of making sure that the shelter is aware of the children's right.
Okay.
Uh, any man any ma- anyone who manages should be aware of this. And then now the uh, anyone who has been who has been actually engaged with or working with a child
Mm-hmm.
should be trained on child protection and the rights, and making sure that they understand the children's right, so that things like abuse or violence will not occur in such. And then also there has to be some form of internal framework where
Mm-hmm.
the amongst the staff are aware of such things, as well as uh, you know within the shelter there has to be some protocols where the things has to be making sure that there's a conducive environment for those children who are living in.
The shelter.
Yes.
Okay. So I was wondering, like, does NCWC, because mentioned how like these staff need to be trained on the rights of the child and all, does NCWC provide trainings and programs for such staff?
Uh, we used to conduct awareness
Awareness.
training on child protection, child rights, and then also and then some other training to those shelter managers, and then look into the case management works also,
Oh,
and
okay.
the trainings and all.
Mm. Is there, because child protection is, I guess, a relatively a new topic in Bhutan, like for such staff, like how are staff chosen to like work at shelters? Like what kind of background do? Is there like, does NCWC also certify them or anybody can work at a shelter?
Uh, now so far
Hmm.
it has been like the staffs who actually work with the children, where there wasn't any specific requirement or any educational background. As long as they work with the children, that was done. But
Mhm.
now, uh, the only condition that we look after is to see whether there is any see the background of that particular person who actually worked with the children, and
Oh,
see whether his or her background, any crime related things have occurred before, or his or her name record is good or not. That is what we see. That we see, and then we look through the police RBPs and NOC
all right.
and certificates. And then as long as their records are clear and good, then the particular agency, uh, you know, actually hire him or her as the shelter manager or shelter somebody who's. But now, what because of the education level being increased, what they actually hire is those counselors who has counselors background.
Counseling background.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
and other than that, I didn't see much, but yeah, I think Tashi and then legal will be able to give you more on this.
Okay. Yeah. I was also wondering, so like again with the UN guidelines for alternative care, like would NCWC ever consider like dismantling shelters, or do you think there is a necessity for shelters in Bhutan?
Um, it's like for a short term, for maybe 3, 4 months, or maybe up to 6 months. I think we need those. We need shelters because
Okay.
especially when they are like emergencies,
Hmm.
like straight away, staffs do not find a place for a child or anyone, any vulnerable group. So we'll end up, letting them stay in. If it is in case being handled by the police, they are kept in the police station. And then if it is handled by NCWC's counselors, they were kept in office. And with the uh, establishment of Women and Child Helpline,
Hmm.
the so many complaints, and then calls have started going in, and then at times we have to go late at night to pick that or get that particular child from a
Right.
place. So, in one hand, we really need it, and then on the other hand, for a long-term duration,
Hmm.
but I don't think it is not necessary. But for the short term, it is needed, very much needed, because during emergencies, there are a lot of issues or a lot of difficulties that is being faced by the you know either by police, health, and then now we have those gender and child focal points in all the zonkas. So every year, whenever we do a meeting on the annual gender and child focal point meeting, we always get this complaint saying that we at least need a shelter in each zonka
Right. Oh, I
to
see.
actually, you know, uh, to actually resolve those emergency issues.
Oh, okay. So short term. Speaking of short term, you mentioned that how like children get placed into shelter as a last resort. So after they're placed into shelters, like how does NCWC proceed with them? Like, because they are probably intended there for a short term, but then because it's a last resort, they end up staying there. And then like, how do they end up like, do they ever get out of the shelter? Like, how does NCWC ensure that?
Um, Now there are some procedures that we actually look into. It's like during the emergency, we won't be able to actually uh, locate
Mhm.
uh, the child's. parents or local guardian or
Right.
any relatives. So, in order to find that, the child has to be kept in a shelter for 1, 2 weeks to actually find out where he is from, where the child is from, and then where the child is staying with, where are the parents, and then sometimes parents have the child is somewhere in Thimphu, and then parents are somewhere in Tashi.
Right.
So we need to call them and then take some time.
Right.
So temporary uh, temporary shelter we should I say like I must say like temporary shelter for them to stay in, and then if they have their parents located means then they can go back with the parents.
Right.
If not, look for a local guardian with whom
Yes.
the child can stay. And then from time to time, it's like instead of she used to monitor whether it's the child has been,
Hmm.
doing well or not,
Right.
whether that child is going to school or not. So those kind of, inspection or maybe assessments used to be done by NCWC.
Oh, I see. Because right now, what I'm aware of is like most of the children in the shelter in Renew, they have been there for like quite some time now. Like most of them, like I mean, they're new. I guess they're new ones as well. But the old ones, some of them have been there for more than like 5 years, 6 years, and all. So like I was wondering, like, what does NCWC do with these kind of cases? Is there,
Uh, I'm
even
not,
after
I'm,
like, sorry, please continue.
yeah, actually, actually, it has to be, they shouldn't be staying there for a long time.
Mhm.
What
Oh,
you have been telling us is like it's a it's going to be a temporary shelter for them,
okay.
and then you know they won't be those children are not always recommended to stay in a shelter in any institution.
Hmm.
So I think NCWC has to intervene in this to making sure that child gets a family environment,
Right.
child gets to stay with a family. So that
Right.
is where the NCWC has to intervene. So maybe Tashi and all, they may be able to tell you, there are certain, so many, some children who have been there for more than 5 years.
Yes.
So what NCWC or, and then legal will also be able to tell you on this.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right. So sorry for bombarding you with such questions. But
no problem.
so I had another question, but so does like is there like a procedure or for like a SOP for NCWC to kind of like monitor the thing, the shelters? Like, is there like a timely monitoring of shelters or?
Yes, there
Oh,
is. There is some criteria been set also. Then there are some standards also which
right.
been set. So most probably legal or protection will be able to tell you on this.
Okay. All
We'll
right.
get more on this. So,
All right. That sounds great. Yes. Okay. I guess yeah. This is like I guess that's about it. All the questions I had regarding NCWC's role in shelters. And
okay.
but I guess so in terms of that, like shelter homes, I guess emergency shelters are going to increase in the country. Like there is a need for it, but how like shelters for children, so our temporary shelters are like how do you say when you say temporary shelter, does it include both children and women, or is it mainly targeted towards like women or mainly targeted towards children? And is there a difference between them? Like, are there different emergency shelter for children or like,
Well, now for now for the present shelter that is being managed by Renew is for those women uh, who were actually the victims of domestic violence. And then also, and of course, there are some children who were actually uh, maybe orphans
mm,
or who have actually experienced other you know other issues. So that's why they learn. But exactly when I say like we have Najin anthems, so they are particularly on children.
Right.
So those who are they actually give shelters to those children who are in difficult circumstances,
I
and
see.
then also and also for those children who come in conflict with the law.
Right. So,
So, but there is
yes.
what we emphasize more is like especially those shelters who actually manage for the children.
Mhm.
Now that needs to be properly monitored because we have children who are minors, actually those minors,
Right.
and then we should be a little careful who is looking after those children and all.
Right.
So they may be we have little difference, but maybe Tashi and then legal will be able to tell you what how do them. But as far as the law guideline is pretty same for them, but I don't know how they used to actually uh, do the monitoring and all.
Mm, I see. So, what's the
Yeah.
difference between Renew's shelter for the children, like Gauling, and Najin Namtinza? What's the like how? So, does NCWC choose which children goes to which shelter, or like how does it work?
Uh, actually, actually, renew one is like for the women, and then but the only difference is like um, Nigel Lumpton do not entertain women,
Oh, okay.
so they go for children, children only, who
Right.
are in difficult circumstances and then in conflict with the law.
Hmm.
And then renew one, I think, for the for boys who is like above uh, 11 or 12 years, they actually don't keep them there.
Oh, okay. So it's just the genders. So does NCWC have a say in like which like in the placement of the children in the shelters though? Like
No,
not at all. So how is it decided? Just the based on the gender though?
no, now now if it is like for the women,
Hmm.
because there is no place in Najranamtin, so we have to straight away send it to Renew's shelter. Now
Okay.
for children,
Yes.
like if it is it's like maybe that woman along with the child. So
Right.
both of them, if the both of them were in difficult circumstances, or
Hmm.
maybe a victim of domestic violence means, then
Hmm.
we send it together to Renew's shelter. Otherwise, if it is just a child alone means we'll see whether there is space for them either at Najinampton or at Renew's shelter.
Okay. Does NCWC also monitor the size of the shelters, the institution, especially like the number of children like placed in
Yes,
shelters? What's how like what's the minimum number of children and like
based on the room size and all, they used to there is some criteria in the guideline. It's like
oh
for each student, they need to have this many big room, the height of the ceiling, and then
okay.
there are some criteria that are in place. So it depends on what the capacity of the shelter
Mm-hmm.
based on the criteria. So
Oh,
if they have big one, then they can accommodate more children. If they have a small one, means then maybe like they will accommodate less, but standard has to be same throughout.
oh okay. Nice. So
Yeah.
does because UN and all they don't they encourage like small scale short-term shelters like does NCWC's guideline also adhere to that same thing or like small scale or is
Yes.
it like the capacity of the place or does it have to be the number of children?
Depends on the capacity of that place.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Mhm.
Does the number of staff, like, is it also put into consideration, the number of staff and all?
Yeah, that is also there in the but we say like we need at least this many but because of NGOs not being able to manage properly, because it's like the more they hire,
Yes.
you know uh, it's like payment of salary, and then so many things are there
Yes.
which NGOs are quite difficult in that.
Right.
Of course, there are rules like for this many children, they need at least one of these. What needs to be done? Managers has to be there. Cook has to be there. But human resource is quite difficult in that because of the lack of financial support and all.
Right. Mm. Like something very, I guess, unique. I'm not sure if it's unique to Bhutan, but then the government actually kind of for how do you say civil servants, like they actually kind of, I think, what's it called? There's a word for it now. There's how, like, government civil servants actually come work for, and they the word starts with, I forgot, but then, like, they're put into like NGOs for, like, a year or two or something like that.
Um, and I don't know what that.
Deputation, sorry. Was it deputation?
Sorry,
Deputation?
the deputation.
Does,
That practice was not there so far. I don't
oh,
know, but
I see.
I don't know. But not exactly sure how this will actually work. But so
Right,
far there were no deputations. Deputation means also like they need salary that will be paid
right.
by the government. Of course, the, Renew has one or two of them
Yes.
who are in deputations.
So yeah, I was
But
regarding
in the
regarding those.
shelter, I don't.
Sorry.
But in the shelter, I don't think there is like where government can actually provide them, you know, shelter managers on
Right.
deputation. But I think that is also one of the like drawing from other professions,
Hmm.
shelters like counselors on deputation. I think that would be great.
Recommendation.
Yeah, yeah, because so far they don't have enough staff.
Right.
So they need, in order to have more staff, they have to, go to the government and ask for a deputation
Right.
um, staff that can actually help them in shelter management and all. That is also one of the good. We can also explore that.
Right. Because what I'm aware of right now is the Gaoiling thing. Shelter has this medical staff health officer who is actually from, I think, Ministry of Health. So that's why I kind of
Mm.
assumed that, the government does send deputation off, like, to NGOs. So I guess is
I
that a
think,
rare case?
but I think it's not a good idea to uh, let government staff who is on deputation to run a shelter. They
Oh,
need
running a
to.
shelter is different, sir. Like,
Running a shelter is quite different uh, because for the technicians, for the professionals like health,
mhm,
like legal,
right.
like financial, I think that is okay. But other than that, I don't know how far the government will be so gracious to provide this.
Oh, okay. All right.
That will be a big question that we can.
Next, probably, hopefully, my
Yeah.
next thesis. All right. I
Mm,
guess that's all the questions I have. Is there anything you'd like
okay.
to add on?
I don't have much to add, but like you were saying, like different. the shelters, um, how the government used to monitor and all this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's what you can do is like you can ask Tashi and then also ask Chencho how this,
Okay.
because they used to, before Tashi and all, the legal used to actually look after these kinship care and then foster care and then adoption, the things they used to look after.
Oh, okay. Mm.
So they will be in a position to tell you more on that.
Okay.
And then now the protection, how they are actually monitoring those shelters, especially uh, Gawalin. Then
Right.
we have uh, Najin Namtin. Now I find one shelter for those who are actually um, the infected with HIV/AIDS, and then also children affected by HIV/AIDS. Somewhere in Guinea.
Right. Lux
That
some.
is no Laksamgi.
Right. Okay.
Shelters do in Guinea.
Oh,
So
okay.
that is also one thing that you can ask PS how they are doing on this, and
Oh,
then are they also certified with NCWC or not?
I see.
You can ask some reviews from them.
Okay.
Tuka.
That's sounds good. I'll stop recording here.
Mm.
Then.